do stunning coins and delicious snacks have in common?
Hi, I'm Jack McNamara, and I love stunning and rare coins. Oh, and I also love delicious and scrumptious food, too. Join me as I combine the best of numismatics and tasty treats into one show. Coin Snacks with Jack. Put down that tired bologna sandwich and spice up your lunch as I chat with some of the biggest names in numismatics and eat delicious snacks. From coin news and U.S. Mint releases to rare coins and numismatic oddities. From my all-time favorite coins to ancients and commemoratives, get your numismatic midweek pick-me-up with Coin Snacks with Jack. Plus, we'll eat snacks, lots of them.
Hey everybody! Welcome back for another episode of Coin Snacks with Jack. I'm your host, Jack McNamara, and I'm starting to feel like they're fattening me up like those kids from Hansel and Gretel. And you know, this I'm going to go off script for a second here because this is going to sound like shtick, but I literally had my my annual checkup with my doctor this morning via teleconference, and he asked me what happened and said that if I don't start working on my diet and exercise, he's going to put me on cholesterol medication. So we'll check back in 6 months and see how I did with that. Anyway, make sure to check us out on YouTube and Facebook every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific. Our numismatic news for the week. Here's our little tidbit for this week. This was the final America the Beautiful quarter from the America the Beautiful quarter program. 56th coin in the series was just released on February 8th. This coin honors the Tuskegee Airmen because there is, of course, a Tuskegee Airmen historic site or national memorial, I think, in Alabama. So this was the final coin in the series. The coin honors the Tuskegee Airmen to commemorate their contributions of the African American pilots during America's fight against fascism in World War II. So very appropriate here in February for Black History Month. Just a really cool coin. I'm excited that this coin finally came out. And there's also, of course, the 5-ounce ATB. We love those big 5-ounce versions of these America the Beautiful quarters too. So that'll be coming out too. I'd like to give a quick thanks to all of the great people who get me on the air every week. We have Nate, Joey, Sofer, Alex, Colleen. I appreciate all of you. We may hear Sofer chime in at some point during the show. As some of you have learned, he is my kind of invisible sidekick here who sometime we'll see if he has anything to say today. He's looking at me like I'm crazy. He doesn't even have a microphone near him, so we're not going to hear him right now, probably. Anyway, now is the moment you've been waiting for. This week, we have a renowned artist responsible for creating countless beautiful still life and figure paintings. And if you haven't seen her paintings yet, I'm sure you've at least seen one of her pieces of work. And if you haven't seen her paintings yet, go to her website, which is lyndallbass.com, right? lyndallbass.com. But if you haven't seen her paintings yet, go there and check them out. But you probably have seen her artwork because it is displayed on over 50 billion Lincoln cents across the United States. Today, we have the designer of the Lincoln Cent Union Shield Reverse, Lyndall Bass. How you doing, Lyndall?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's good to see you, Jack.
You too. Good to see you again. Last time it was here in our studio, so I feel like I'm kind of, even though we're on Zoom here, I feel like I'm kind of in your studio for a change, which is really exciting for me. So.
Well, I'm glad. I've got things kind of set up, so I hope people can see the paintings. I've got a lot of different documents from our days at the Mint when we were working on the penny, so I have a lot to show everyone.
I'm very excited. I'm really looking forward to it. And before we get into that, as you know, it wouldn't be Coin Snacks with Jack without a snack. So I would like to welcome the lovely Colleen Happy birthday, Colleen, to introduce our snack of the week.
Oh, Jack. Well, I know we've done cake a couple of different times, but this was a big week for us.
You can never have too much cake.
Right? Yes, I agree. So yesterday, your birthday, all day long. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Today, my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And also, I was born in Springfield, Illinois, land of Lincoln, who's our guest, Lyndall Bass, with all her work with the Lincoln Cent. Just goes to show you, everything is related to coins.
Yes.
So, now to cake. So, because I know your doctor wants you to be careful,
you didn't
you
hear
have
that.
A portion control here.
I have 6 months to
You can have
school.
one little cupcake instead of a whole giant piece. But let's just dive into cake. Now, it was the ancient Egyptians and ancient Romans. They sort of started the whole history of celebration cakes, although I don't really think any of us would want to have eaten that because it was mostly like grains and sweetened with honey. So it was really the Germans.
My doctor wants me to eat that.
Well,
one, I
yeah,
think,
that would
probably.
be his recommended cake for you, yes. But the Germans sort of perfected the birthday cake back in between the 14th and the 1400s all the way up into the 1700s. And they kind of created the actual cake, and they would light candles, and it was sort of when a child had a birthday, they called it the Kinderfesten. And the candles would burn all day, and they couldn't have the cake until the end of the day. So
Bummer.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't wait that long.
Yeah. So it's you're like you one year older, you have to have more patience. Maybe that's what they were trying to teach. So anyway, today my favorite cupcake is sprinkles. This was started by a husband and wife. They were investment bankers. They opened their first cupcake store in Beverly Hills, and that's where these were picked up from this morning.
All right.
Cupcakes baked fresh every day, all natural ingredients. And the reason why I love them is because not only is the cake super moist, but the icing to cake ratio is just perfect. And that to me is very important. So we have balloons here, we have cupcakes. We're here with Lyndall. We're really excited to have a great show, and I hope you enjoy a cupcake, Jack.
All right. And Lyndall, you got your cupcakes, right? We always make sure our guests get some snacks.
Oh yeah, I have some gorgeous cupcakes here, very luxurious. And
Uh-oh.
they let me do the decorating, not the sprinkles, but the little discs. So
Very cute.
plenty of fun built into it, but very luxurious looking. I
Lovely.
confess, chocolate one yesterday.
So you pre-sampled. Wonderful.
Good for you.
Really good.
Good for you.
Okay.
Don't get any icing on any of your artwork there.
I know, I have them like pushed away over here.
All right. Well, let's get into it here. So, as a coin geek here, of course, we're always focused on the numismatics of things. So, what inspired you in the first place to reach out to the U.S. Mint for their artistic infusion program?
Well, it actually happened. I was cruising around on some sites I belong to that artists use to find freelance work. And generally, I don't find things because my skills are so drawing-based and painting-based, but you never know. And as soon as I saw this call from the Mint, I was immediately intrigued because I went to school in Philadelphia. I had classmates who had gone on to the Mint to work there. And I always had a fascination with what appeared on coins since I was a kid. And when I saw the ad, I immediately had a vivid recollection of being around 10 or 11 years old. I had started studying art with a friend of my father's who was an artist, a practicing artist, and he was teaching me to look. And I really looked at the Liberty dime. And I thought it was gorgeous. And I thought, wow, someday I want to be able to do artwork like this. And the fact that it was on a coin kind of made me always think, well, I'd like to do a coin. As you can tell, I remained very naive for approximately 20 years until I got to the Mint. And having gotten in the program, I was absolutely thrilled. What they do is send out a call to artists. They have an assignment. In this case, we had a fake assignment to do a drawing that somehow commemorated Jamestown.
Okay.
And that was up my street because at the time I was teaching at the Institute of American Indian Art, and I made a portrait of Powhatan with the ships coming in from the distance. And it was all, graphite drawing, which was my forte, really. It's one of my higher skill levels. So I felt really at home, and I was excited. And when I got in, I was just thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And that's kind of the artistic reason, but there are also some really personal reasons. If you don't mind me going on,
please do.
Grew up in the military. My father was a naval officer, and he died in his 40s. He was in line for an admiral, and he loved art. And he was very proud of me that I had shown this talent, and he took me every Saturday for lessons and so forth. And I just felt a strong pull to do a coin sort of to honor him. I was 14 when he died, and I don't think I would have been an artist without his nurturing of that in me. So the whole thing, I just felt like, I just had a lot of drive, and I really needed it because there was a lot of falling down and getting up. I was there for 2 years. I knew absolutely nothing about coins. I had to super up my game on the computers. Everything was distant, based through communications, and also the graphics development. I didn't go to school when graphics were a part of the curriculum, so I had to teach myself Photoshop, teach myself Illustrator, really start to understand how to send and receive images. And I never stopped questioning it. I just really plowed into the whole thing. And, I never quite fell off the cliff, but I got pretty close to the edge many times as far as, feeling like I really didn't know what I was doing or how to do it. But, I have a scholarly background. I went from art school to Indiana University, where I studied instructional systems in the education department and got a master's in that. So I kind of had this empty study place where I learned about communicating visually. But I had never actually worked, except for teaching in the arts in any kind of applied sense. I went directly into studio production after teaching. I taught at Milwaukee Institute of Design, and then, like I said, I was over at the Institute of American Indian Art teaching drawing. So I pretty much for 2 years just followed those assignments at the Mint and kept teaching. But
I'm glad you persevered through the struggle, because we're all pleased as coin collectors with the outcome. Let's talk a little bit about that. What came to be the shield reverse cent that we all see every day in our life here. What was your process designing that Union Shield cent?
Well, I had done 12 designs prior, so I'm really glad it happened that way. I don't think I could have actually handled the project in the beginning. Like I said, I had no experience really. So when we got our assignments, which are usually a collection of a couple of different ways of looking at the coin concept itself, my concept was Abraham Lincoln's preservation of the Union. And at first I was really taken aback because I thought to myself, how the heck do you make a picture out of this?
Right.
And there was the penny. I held the penny, I looked at the penny, I put it back and forth in my hand. And my first idea was to kind of play off of the Lincoln Memorial idea and bring it into contemporary times and show it in a bigger, more dynamic way. So I'll get up and start showing some of my drawings.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that Lincoln Memorial reverse was used for 50 years, from 1959 up until 2008.
It was really it was really hard for me to imagine the penny without it, kind of thing.
Right.
They wanted artists who could kind of bring some fresh insights and see outside of the box. But what was cool about working with the team and other artists collaboratively is you could think a little bit outside the box, and then everybody would push everybody else way outside the box.
Okay.
So I think that's interesting as far as where I started. I did a sketch. Let me see if I bring this up. This was a rough sketch of sort of my idea. I think I'll put, close up of the memorial, like you're actually standing there looking at it.
Like instead of the view we're used to where it's from a distance, you're actually in the memorial looking at Lincoln.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of people never realize there's actually a teeny-weeny Lincoln inside the Lincoln Memorial.
Right.
And coin collectors probably know this.
Right.
But it's so tiny, it's like
if you look with a loop at your normal, cent from that period, you're right. I don't know if everyone knows that, but if you look at that Lincoln Memorial right in the middle, you can see, a tiny, tiny version of what you just showed us.
Yeah, and if you visit the Lincoln Memorial, I lived outside Washington, D.C. in Chevy Chase during high school, and every weekend we'd go down to the mall practically. There was so much to see there, and standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial is really awesome. So it's kind of what I was thinking of, and I started my first, serious drawing of the idea. I had some friends go downtown and take a picture of it for me. And then finally, the first turn-in was this one. And I, did like a little Star Wars thing with the letters and scaled it up, so it would all fit. The E pluribus unum and the 1 cent were the only requirement for lettering aside from the United States of America. So it was the lettering was spare and concise, which was a big plus. So, as often happened with the coin progress, this idea got kicked out. And it's expected, nobody gets a home run the first time and wins the game. It's all an unfolding process. So, a little bit different than what I do in the studio. I get an idea based on a theme that will have some way of being presented to the public, and then I take it to its completion. And I never know how long it's going to take, and afterwards it gets framed and hopefully sold. So this was that team-based working, which really intrigued me because of where things go. It's like this journey, and it pushes you to grow and be creative. It's very creative, so I loved it. And that got kicked out, and then I was floundering. I didn't know where to go exactly, and I had a nice chat with John Mercanti, who was incredibly generous to all of his artists, especially us little, birdies that just got hatched out of the egg. Being overwhelmed was a common thing, that John had to handle because none of us were in the coin world, and he was really good and really instructive at kind of figuring out where you were stuck and then kind of nudging you over. So at a certain point, I was trying this and trying that, and he said, well, what's been happening is the concepts are getting narrowed down to shield, eagle, banner, wreath.
Okay.
So I went for broke, and I did all of them in one design.
Okay.
This was the most formal version of what I turned in for my second design. I don't know, is it glaring, or I'll see if I can.
Right there, that's good.
Okay, so here you see eagle, shield, banner, wreath. The wreath is kind of, an iconic representation of just the bay leaves, which are classic for wreaths. I think the bay leaves in the wheat scent are, there's actually wheat in that one, but there are other coins in which the wreaths
you see wheat a lot, and you see a lot of olive branches in a lot of and you see on the newest the new Silver Eagle reverse they used oak, which I guess is a symbol of strength. I hadn't seen that one before, but apparently that's our national tree, and it's a symbol of strength. So a lot of different branches have different symbolism.
I think the thing about those that's also important is the fruit that the tree bears. There's probably an acorn. I haven't seen that coin, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I picked this because there wasn't any fruit, and I could make it minimal.
Okay.
And I like the whole bay leaf tie to ancient Greece and ancient Rome and so on and so forth. So I did that, and the journey to do that was drawing after drawing after drawing. So, I really loved it and I was attached to it. And it's probably the hardest time I had letting go of and moving on with the design. One thing I wanted to show
to get to that design, how many kind of versions does it take you to get to kind of that version?
Oh, well, there's a whole lot of sketches. There's, I don't know, 5 or 6 sheets of just, they're not doodles, but you're just going fast. You're just trying
kind of
to
a
get
rough,
it out, get it out, make it rough. And then there's just a lot of refining that goes on. Like this is one of my first attempts to do something that was semi-formal.
Okay.
And I ended up thinking this isn't going to work. It looks like a teacup. If you glance at it, it's a fat shield. The branches are kind of like a teacup handle, and it looks really tippy with the banner down there. So I really had to think about shields, how to put the shield on the circular ground, which in my world is composing on a square. And the circle is in the middle. So if you just think circles, you start to spin around in your head when you think about the composition. But if you think a square, then you can start lining things up vertically and horizontally and be able to get more out of the design process that way. So, I applied that worked. And then when I did submit the design that I just showed you that was formal, it was received well. And then when it went into the committees, a lot of discussion started to happen. I think in my estimation of what happened was how to produce the penny and the drive to make it very simple. As simple as it could be and also be meaningful. So at that point, I got word that I should take out the eagle and just do one that had the wreath, which was this one. And this actually went into the finals. There were 18 finals that were voted on, and this was actually in there as well.
Yeah, because you could see how that would work on a coin because of just the roundness of the shape of the wreath around it.
Yeah, and it's got a distinct profile that would sit up on the penny. So I really, really worked on this one because the leaves, I wanted to completely redo the leaves, make a wreath. I had figured out how to do the banner and where to place it on the shield so that it looked stronger. However, this one had to be lower to fit the wreath.
And is that bay leaves again?
Yeah, this is bay leaves again. And but then they also wanted one that was just a shield. And so I developed this. I brought the banner up, and the shield is a little bit longer. And this shield is very, it's very singular. I mean, they're all shields. They all have the stripes of the 13 colonies, but they all have a different feeling, not just a different look, but a different feeling. And to get that feeling, I ended up going, I was looking at the past coins. I didn't see anything quite right, and I really didn't want to do a copy of somebody else's shield. I want to have my own shield. And I ended up being inspired most by two things, which was the buttons that were worn on the Union soldiers' uniforms.
Here we have it up on our screen here.
That one's really fat, but you see how it's kind of bowed in the center?
Right.
And that's because the button is convex. But I also started to think about how to humanize this shield and how to make it more like a common man's shield, a shield that you might have in your mind as a reminder of the protection and defense that your nation gives you, rather than a combative type shield that would remind you of Roman soldiers hopping off their chariots and getting into a big battle.
Right.
I want it to be obviously shield, obviously about defense,
but kind of more nurturing, a little less aggressive.
more nurturing and more shaped like a humanistic shape. So it was an odd direction for me to go that minimal for a human impact, because I paint the figure, I draw the figure. So when it turned out that was the one they liked more than the one with the wreath. Let me see if then I started needing to tighten it up, get the placement of that shield, the placement of the banner, absolutely set just right on the circle so that the negative space was as interesting as the field of the image itself. And I kept wanting to make the shield breathe. I wanted to make it come out and go in. And by this time you can tell I'm going off into outer space about this shield. What I did was I ended up superimposing the whole design. Can you see this in the camera?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, right there. That's good.
Okay. I superimposed the whole shield and banner on Leonardo da Vinci's Anatomy Man. And that way, the top of the shield is his chest, is across the chest, is across the part of the body that breathes. And then let me do this again. The legs are coming down at the intersection of the banner across the shield, and the arms are coming in the curve of the top. So it helped me find the curve, it helped me place the banner, and it gave me a sense of like the top of the apex of the shield is where the head is. And so then I started to feel like this shield was really warming up. It was really becoming a friendly, protective shield that wasn't like anything else. And no one ever really needs to know this. I mean, it's interesting, but designers need to know this kind of thing so that the design really comes alive. And it's a mystery how you infuse whatever you do with life. It's kind of a mystery. And in this case, with working with the Mint, I had to analyze that mystery a lot more than I do in the studio. I'm just kind of like shooting from the hip. Yeah, this is good, that's good. This excites me, that doesn't. And then sometimes, damn it, that doesn't work at all. But then it's up to me to throw it out. In this case, the committees and everyone involved in deciding how coin will look when it gets produced.
Right. And it's amazing how much thought goes into this, because when I saw the penny before we met, it's a fairly simple design. There's not a lot going on. I mean, you even started with a lot more, eagles and bay leaves, and brought it down to this kind of more minimalistic design. But it still amazes me just how much kind of symbolism and how much goes into give it a feeling that, like, I think we subconsciously, like, I look at it and I feel a certain way about it, but I don't realize why, and I think there's all that. So it amazes me how much there is kind of behind this. Now, also, I understand, when you worked on this, you and current chief engraver, you talked about prior John Mercanti, but current chief engraver Joseph Mena worked together on this. Can you tell us a little bit about that collaboration and
Sure.
what happened there?
Yeah. Joseph's initials are also on the coin under the banner on the right hand side, I think. Yeah. And the way that worked is that John Mercanti was the chief engraver, and he was the one that talked to each artist, managed the process from creative side by talking and discussing each artist's ideas and their work. And then at that time, Joe, being the engraver, was not someone that I spoke directly to except through John. And I had complete and utter trust in anything Joe did, because we had 2 symposiums in person at the Mint, and we visited each artist's work area, the studio where everything was made. We saw wonderful, production. We got a tour of seeing coins actually be pounded out downstairs. But anyway, I met Joe, and I just had such respect for his background and the way he thought about the classicism involved in coin design. And then the computer and technical equipment and process that they have to work with is astonishing. What happens is this design goes to the engraver, but he doesn't engrave right away in the old sense. He makes a clay model of what I had done. And it's big, it's like this big. And then they take a 3D pano kind of video of that sculpture, and that goes into a 3-dimensional Photoshop type program where they can really, really take things to a micromillimeter correction. So all the lettering, which I also designed, the placement and the serifs and non-serif and all that, that's all done for machine accuracy. And then from there, you probably know all this. From there, the computer program is put into the laser cutting machine, which is just amazing. It's like, I felt like I was at NASA. I really did.
That's amazing. So
it was, yeah.
It's I'm always fascinated to talk to when you came out here in the past, but just the amount of, as coin collectors, we just kind of look for these things, and we, but it's the actual, the development and the production is stuff that we kind of just take for granted a lot. So, clearly, I'm looking at my notes here. My questions that I had were kind of about alternative designs and inspiration, but I think you already touched on a lot of that. But how does that all differ from, normally you said kind of you work in graphite and you work in paint. How is your approach for designing a coin different than the approach you're using, normally in these other, areas of art that you're normally working in? I'd imagine the approach has to be fairly different.
Well, they are and they aren't. Of course, the paintings are self-directed, and I'll often, like for instance, for gallery exhibition and public sale, I will have themes that kind of have to repeat for a while. I did a lot of still life. And so you kind of have to have a brand in contemporary terms, but they used to call it a personal signature, or, something where collectors can come back year after year and see your work and know that you did it. So my thing was always traditional realism. I studied at the Academy, and we had the Academy was the first art school in the United States that was professional. It was based on the Beaux-Arts in Paris, so it's very Euro American. And so that's right in the groove of designing coins in my mind. However, the whole process, nobody comes in with a piece of paper telling me to paint this way to communicate X, Y, Z. I have a range that I'm working in. Let's just stick to still life because it's kind of easy to talk about the range. I have a range, and I'll decide that I'm looking at other people's work, or just having had a nice dinner where grapes were on the table, that I'm going to paint some grapes. And how am I going to do it? And what am I going to put with it? What are my colors? So it just kind of comes up naturally like that. And then I get going on it. And it's far more, it's got a type of freedom to it that has fewer limits. When you're working for the Mint, you have a team, you respond to other artists, you work with other artists, you have to be aware that the process is kind of brutal. When I was there, Susan Gamble, who was an absolutely great designer, She was very generous in helping us understand the process, and it's very difficult. And it really helped me that she said, look, this is brutal, and it was. But the whole quest of being an artist is difficult. It's difficult to make your way. It's difficult to compete. So, I took it. I took it on, and I like a challenge. So the challenges were different, but what's so cool is that when the thing closes up and it's done, it's like a magic thing. And you start to forget how you did it, and it has its own presence in the world. It's very magical, and I think coins are the same. When I held the penny in my hand for the first time, it was big magic, and it felt like something completely different than what I had been doing in the studio. It became a thing, and then I suddenly got the whole notion of coin lust. I don't know how else to say it. It just grabs you. And so I would do it again. If the Mint opened the program again, I would definitely do it again, because it's 2 years worth of skill building and comprehension to try to understand, and it's a really, really fascinating problem.
Well, as you're talking about the challenges and saying how brutal it is, I imagine part of that is because, if you're working on a painting and it's kind of for yourself, you kind of decide when you're happy with it and when it's done, whereas the Mint, I know when we kind of spoke yesterday when we were kind of preparing for this, you mentioned about the differing in the scale. You had mentioned, and if you could talk a little about this, how you had a version that you thought was great, and then when they reduced it to the size of a penny, all of a sudden it didn't quite translate the same.
Yeah, that was scary, because I was sitting there thinking, oh, this is terrific. This is really great. And then, so I figured, oh, I'm done. I can rest now. But then I reduced it, and I have a sample of what we, let's see here. What we send to the Mint is, oh dear. Oh, here we go. Is that it? Yeah.
We have
what we send to the
saying
Mint.
Hello. Sorry.
You see, this is a life-size. Let me try to get this where you can see it.
You gotta go down a little more, down a little bit more.
This right here.
Oh, the little one. Okay.
Yeah, see what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I missed it.
That's why you missed it. That's actually the size of the penny. Okay. And so the first time I did that, I made changes. I had to make changes because it's so tiny. It's so really, really tiny, the little differences. And so that's the point at which I started placing it very, very carefully with a grid, absolutely computer measured, and just did the measuring and shifted it little micromillimeters in Photoshop. Thank God for Photoshop. And until it looked good at that size.
Right, on a tiny size.
Yeah, you don't know what it's going to look like.
Right. So I have a few more questions, but also Sofer has a few comments, I think, from our viewers. What do you have for us, Sofer?
We have some people that are just very appreciative, Lyndall, for you coming on. We have Mr. James Z. He says, thanks so much for being on. It's interesting to hear everything you have to say about designing this coin. We have a Brian just saying, hello, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Cool.
Oh, that's great. That's really great.
So how does it feel? What does it feel like to be in the company of such numismatic legends like Victor David Brenner and Frank Gasparo, who designed the previous Lincoln Cent reverses?
It's kind of hard to believe. It's very humbling. And sometimes if I'm sitting in a big traffic jam, or I'm at an event where there are hundreds of people and stuff, I think, oh my God, everybody here has my initials in their wallet or in their pocket. And then my husband's English, and when we go overseas, I love looking in the wishing wells, and there's my penny in the wishing well in a foreign country. And so you think about, I think you just said at the beginning of the program, there were 10 billion pennies that have been produced.
Yeah, I think that's the number we had. Was it 10 billion? Yeah, 50 billion. 50 billion.
So there you go. My initials, 50 billion times. So I tell people I have sold more art than any artist on the planet Earth.
That's like six pennies per person on the planet, Lyndall.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
It's huge. It's impossible to.
Did you work a royalty deal per piece?
Oh, don't get me started. I'll take a half a cent per coin. They're going to spend 7 cents.
Right, exactly.
I only had a penny for every penny, Jeff.
Right. So I know, and I found this really fascinating when you were here in a couple of years ago and we talked. But I know when you, after working with the Mint and working on this penny, you had this kind of deep connection with President Lincoln, and you ended up creating this portrait, which I love. Like I said, I have one in my office. Can you talk a bit about that, about your inspiration and about the process and about this sketch you did of the print that you produced then of Lincoln?
Yeah, I had a set relationship with Lincoln as a kid. Went to grade school in Virginia, and the history of the founding fathers and the founding of our nation and everything was a big deal in Virginia schools. So we studied, I had a thing for Ben Franklin, I had a thing for Thomas Jefferson, and I had a thing for Abraham Lincoln. And particularly the way that Abraham Lincoln just kept trying, no matter what happened. And having lost both of my parents before I was an adult, I just carried Lincoln around with me, just like knowing that if I kept persevering and studying and picturing to myself what I was capable of doing, I could do it. Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, I put myself through, when I was at the academy, I realized I was going to have to find a way of making a living immediately. Mm-hmm. And so the older alumni would come back and let us know that they were driving trucks. So I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So I went to college, and at Indiana University there was a fireplace that had inscribed on it a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And it said, "I will study and get ready because someday my time will come." Uh-huh. And I just carried that through the whole time I was in school. So here I am working on the penny, and I found out I got it, and it was like this huge explosion of joy and overwhelm. Wonderful, wonderful outcome. And I just started feeling this deeper connection even to Abraham Lincoln than I had ever had. And I really wanted to do his portrait. So it kind of helped me come down from this enormous high of getting the pen. Uh-huh. So I basically grounded myself with this deep connection doing the portrait. And I really wasn't quite sure, if anyone would ever see it, And then when I showed it to you guys, when I was on set at RCTV, it was just really great to hear that you were interested in it and that I could share this with people who would want to buy it. So I had already started kind of producing this series, and I really didn't know how I was going to promote it. Uh-huh. So it was just fabulous that you guys wanted to get it out there. And I think now I'm still fascinated by his face, and the whole lore and history around him. And I'll probably end up doing an oil portrait at some point of him. I think he has a face that you can just look at forever. Uh-huh.
And it's a little different view. And I think you said this was a photography that you took this image from?
Yeah, Matthew Brady had an assistant whose name escapes me.
And Brady is the most famous, that's those famous portraits that we see, those, because that's kind of the beginning of photography, right? Those Anthony Burgess. I have it in my notes here. Anthony Burgess.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
But Brady,
Well,
Brady, for people who don't know, those are those famous images you see of Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. And the earliest ones were daguerreotypes. So that was early photography. So we were fortunate to have photographs. And anyway, this photograph was taken by Burgess very much I think it was post-Civil War. And I just really liked it because it wasn't famous, and Lincoln was kind of happy. You know, he barely ever felt pride in what he did. And because the war was settled the way he wanted it to be, despite all the hardships and real agony that war brought to the country and himself personally, I just thought, you know, he deserved to be remembered by that photograph. And I liked the composition and the pose and all that. So that was it. You know, it was, I was kind of back to the drawing board being an artist where nobody was telling me which one to pick or anything like that. I just zoomed into the one that pulled me most. And that's what
you're right. Now that I look at it, he does, you know, I never really thought too hard on it, but you know, normally when you see him, and I think he's the earliest president we have photographs of, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. When you see him, you know, whether it's in one of those photos, the Brady photos that you see, or, you know, on a Lincoln Cent or on a medal or a plaque or a statue, you know, he is always very serious looking because obviously the seriousness of the times and everything. But the image you use, he does, it's like almost there's a little smirk there, kind of like it's just a kind of a crack, but you can see there's a little, like his one corner of his mouth is kind of turned up, like he's a little pleased, which is kind of nice. It's a different look. Now, you know, that's clearly a portrait, and I'm looking around your studio. You know, portrait seems to be one of your kind of fortes. You want to talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned kind of like the difference between creating a coin versus, you know, having to be, you know, having a third dimension to it versus, you know, a charcoal sketch versus a painting. You want to talk a little bit about some of your other work and kind of the difference here?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is a drawing that I did in advance of doing the painting, which is, I'm pointing out right there. And typically that's what I'll do. You know, the model will come in and I'll do a portrait from life. You know, I'm sorry, this does have a little bit of glare on it, but I think you can see. One of the reasons I wanted to show you guys this one is you can see half of her face is in light and half of her face in shadow.
Right.
Also, there's a lot of softness in the hair and so forth. It's not real sharp looking at it this way, but I think I have it on my website. If not, I'll put it on there. And this is exactly what you would never want to send to the Mint. They can't work with this.
Right.
This is 3D. This is evocative of textures and light in a way that coins just don't do that. So what I learned slowly over time, you know, you can hear it, but you can't necessarily do it until you get the skill. So what I learned over time is that I was making a map for these sculptors. And part of that map is thinking about how they're going to model the clay. And I had worked in sculpture. I'll show you. I have a small bust that I did, and I had it cast in bronze. This was a portrait bust I did of my son when he was around 8.
Okay.
And you know, I was super into the naturalistic bronzes that had been done in America by St. Gaudens and so forth. And I think part of the reason why I got into the program is that I had some experience with sculpture as well as painting.
Okay.
So anyway, I did one of the portraits that I worked on, and working with the Mint really actually improved my portraiture quite a bit. But this drawing of Rutherford B. Hayes was one of the submissions that I made.
Oh yeah, for the presidential dollar program, right?
For the presidential dollar, and I forget who it went to, but my submission, I think this one really shows the map the best. And some of the features that a drawing for the sculptors at the Mint needs to have. You need to have a really clear outline of a field. And that's something coin designers are going to get right away. This is the drawing of the field itself before it gets applied to the circle of the coin. But I kind of knew where it was going to be because you can see how I put the...
right, the curvature of the bust kind of follows where the rim of the coin would go.
Yeah, exactly. But further than that, this drawing has light and then shadow on the other side. This one, the light is kind of coming from the front, so you see where the plane breaks are of the cheeks on both sides. And the nose it doesn't have a cast shadow under it because you don't want any cast shadows in these drawings. You don't have cast shadows on the coin. You just want a little bit of contact shadowing, like under the bow tie, to show that there's a little bit of lift there.
Right,
and there's a little bit of lift under the beard. It's interesting. After you kind of make your map, you got to kind of make it look attractive. You want the judges to be drawn to the attractiveness of the drawing, but that's actually not what the sculptor needs. So it's really interesting. And then the hair is always a big deal. How are you going to do hair in metal on a flat surface? So instead of having hair that's got like flyaway bits and softness and stuff, like if you look in the mustache, I think you can see everything is kind of pieced out. And the little directions of the hairs are in clumps, and they kind of need to go and define the form of the feature. So when you look at the hair on a well-designed portrait coin, it's going to show you the shape of the head. And so it's really sophisticated. It's a really sophisticated problem. And so that was the one drawing that I thought where I really understood what they were talking about. And it took a few, because to go from this kind of thing to that was part of my learning process, a big part.
Right, yeah, such a different, similarities but different. I'm looking at the artwork behind you there, and around the woman's face, it's outside of her hair, it's a very soft transition to the background. Where, like you said, on a coin, you've got a flat field and it has to be clearly defined where it ends.
I mean, I think every time you hold a sculpture in your hand, a coin in your hand, it's really a little sculpture. That's how I think.
Right, it really is. And then even the painting behind you, where the one side of her face is almost completely dark. I mean, I can only imagine if you submitted that for a coin, they'd say, "What, do we just strike half a coin? Like what?"
That's the end of my coin assignments.
Well, this has been so much fun, Lyndall. Do you any closing words? Anything else you want to share with us before we get going here?
Well, there's one little tidbit. One of the things I absolutely didn't expect was the legal requirements of the designs. Every time you do a design, you have to prove whatever you've drawn from or whatever you came up with is completely and totally copyright free. And you have to document, like we had, real quick, I'll show you, we had to submit documents with each design that showed where I got all the photographs. This one was for the, what was it for? It was for the weapons burial ceremony, the Great Law of Peace dollar. I think it was a gold dollar. And so I had like pages of showing, even to the point of, my own photographs of pine trees to show the pine needles in the back of the design. And that was really very administrative, very tough. And I was told by one of the staff at the program that only 80% of all fine artists are able to do this work because of so many dimensions of requirement. And you spend gobs of hours. I mean,
Right. I don't imagine in general.
Over at 5 o'clock.
I'd imagine in general, creative types aren't the first thing you want to do as an artist is probably not going and documenting all of your sources and filling out forms and paperwork. It's hard enough that they're telling you got to put "In God We Trust" and "E Pluribus Unum" and fit within the size. Now all of a sudden, now you got to do paperwork.
It's a huge responsibility because every lawyer out there would love to sue the mint.
I would imagine that's a big target, right?
Huge.
Well, this has been really great. I hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lyndall. Everybody who's watching, go check out Lyndall's website, lyndallbass.com. She's just phenomenal. You can see some of her artwork in her studio. I'm so glad that we had a chance to kind of, you've been in our studio, but this feels like I've gotten a chance to come to your studio and come to your home turf and see a little bit of your process and understand it. And it's just been, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Lyndall. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure for me too, Jack. Thanks so much.
Sure. Everybody else, thank you again for joining me today here at Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're streaming here every week on Facebook and YouTube at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So tune in for your weekly dose of numismatics and snacks. We'll see you again next week for another episode.
Thanks for watching Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Coin Snacks. Visit us at rarecollectiblestv.com.